My cheating wife slept with a married man, used our son as cover, so I made her watch it collapse. I don't lose sleep over what happened. I lose sleep over when it started. My name is Henry, I'm 35 years old, and I run a small business that I built from the ground up. For 13 years I thought I had everything figured out. 5 years of marriage to Catherine, Kate, as everyone called her, and I genuinely believed I was living the dream that most men could only fantasize about. Kate wasn't just beautiful. She was the kind of woman who made other wives jealous, and other husbands wonder what they'd done wrong in life. Smart, gentle, devoted to our family. She had this way of making everyone around her feel special, like they were the most important person in the room. Our friends would constantly tell me how lucky I was. "You hit the jackpot with Kate," they'd say, and I'd nod with that stupid, satisfied grin that comes from thinking you've won at life. She managed our home like a CEO manages a Fortune 500 company. Everything organized, everything perfect. Dinner was always ready when I came home from work. Our son's activities were coordinated with military precision, and somehow she still found time to look stunning every single day. I trusted her completely, the way you trust the ground beneath your feet. Never questioned it, never doubted it. Why would I? I was living with what everyone else considered the perfect wife, but perfection, I learned, is sometimes just a carefully maintained illusion. I remember the exact moment I started building my business. Kate was 22, fresh out of college with a degree in marketing that she never really used. We were young, broke, and madly in love. I had this crazy idea about starting my own consulting firm, and while everyone else told me I was insane to leave my stable corporate job, Kate was my biggest cheerleader. "I believe in you," she'd say, curled up next to me on our second-hand couch in our tiny apartment. "We'll figure it out together." Those early years were hard, really hard. We lived on ramen noodles and hope, and Kate never complained. Not once. She took on freelance work to help pay the bills. She listened to me vent about difficult clients, and she celebrated every small victory like we'd won the lottery. When I landed my first major contract, she cried happy tears and told me she was proud to be my partner. Looking back now, I wonder if those tears were real or just another performance. But at the time, they felt like everything. The business grew slowly but steadily. By the time we got married, I was making enough to support us both, and Kate could focus on what she said she wanted most, being a wife and eventually a mother. Our wedding was perfect, like something out of a magazine. Kate handled every detail flawlessly, and I remember thinking that if she could organize an event like that, she could probably run the country. Our son came 2 years later, and watching Kate become a mother was like watching someone discover their true calling. She was natural at it, intuitive in ways that amazed me. She knew what he needed before he cried, anticipated his schedules before he developed them, and somehow managed to look effortlessly beautiful even during those sleep-deprived early months. I used to joke that she was too good to be true. The irony of that statement haunts me now. The first 5 years of our marriage felt like a fairy tale. My business continued to grow, Kate devoted herself to our family, and we built this picture-perfect life in the suburbs. She volunteered at our son's school, organized neighborhood events, and somehow found time to maintain friendships with what seemed like half the women in town. Everyone loved Kate. She was the kind of person who remembered birthdays, brought casseroles when people were sick, and always knew exactly what to say in any situation. I was so proud to be her husband. At company events, other men would look at her with obvious envy, and I'd feel this surge of satisfaction knowing she'd chosen me. When we'd walk into restaurants, heads would turn, and I'd think, yeah, that's my wife. It was shallow, maybe, but it felt good to be the guy who'd won the prize that everyone else wanted. But somewhere along the way, the fairy tale started to crack. The changes started small, so subtle that I almost missed them entirely. Kate began going out more frequently with her girlfriends, something she'd rarely done before. "I need some time with the girls," she'd say, and I encouraged it. I thought it was healthy. A happy wife makes a happy life, right? At first it was once a week, then twice, then she was going out almost every other night. She'd come home later and later, sometimes past midnight, always with stories about how much fun she'd had at this bar or that restaurant. Her energy seemed different too, not tired from a night out, but almost electric, like she was living some secret adventure that energized her in ways our home life never had. I should have paid more attention to the details of her stories. The restaurants she mentioned, I'd driven past some of them, and they looked more like sports bars than the upscale places she described. The friends she claimed to be with, when I'd run into them at school events or neighborhood gatherings, they'd mention how they missed seeing Kate, how they wished she'd join them for their weekly dinners again. But I was busy. The business was demanding more of my time, and I trusted Kate completely. If she said she was out with friends, then she was out with friends. If she said she needed space to maintain her social life, then I was going to be the supportive husband who gave her that space. The phone thing started around the same time. Kate had always been casual about her phone, leaving it on counters, asking me to check her messages when she was driving, never showing any signs of secrecy. But gradually, that changed. The phone became an extension of her hand, always within reach, always face down when she set it anywhere. She'd get text messages at odd hours, early morning, late at night, and when I'd glance over, she'd quickly turn the screen away. When I'd joke about her suddenly becoming so popular, she'd laugh and say something about group chats with the other moms being drama central and not worth my attention. Looking back, I can see how methodical her deception was. Every lie had a grain of truth to make it believable. Every excuse was reasonable enough not to raise suspicion. Every change in behavior was gradual enough to seem natural rather than sudden. She was good at it, really good. Then came the suggestion that blindsided me completely. We were having breakfast on a Saturday morning, our son was watching cartoons in the living room, and Kate casually mentioned over her coffee, "Henry, I think we should try a separation." I nearly choked on my cereal. What? Why? Did I do something wrong? She shook her head, that same gentle smile she'd always worn, but somehow it looked different now. Practiced. "It's not about you doing anything wrong. I just think I need some space to figure things out. We've been together for 13 years. Maybe I need to rediscover who I am outside of this relationship." The conversation felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life implode. She made it sound so reasonable, so modern and progressive. "It doesn't have to be permanent," she assured me. "Just some time apart to grow as individuals." "But I thought we were happy," I said, and even as the words left my mouth, I realized how naive they sounded. "We are happy," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "But maybe we could be even happier if we took some time to work on ourselves separately. I love you, Henry. I love our family. I just need to figure out who I am when I'm not Henry's wife or Jamie's mom." She made it sound like a spiritual journey, like she was trying to become a better person for the sake of our marriage. And because I loved her, because I trusted her completely, I found myself nodding along with her logic. "How long are we talking about?" I asked. "I don't know. A few months, maybe? I could stay with my sister, and we could take things day by day. See how we both feel." But something in my gut screamed that this wasn't about personal growth. This was about something else entirely. The signs became impossible to ignore once I started paying attention. Kate would disappear for hours during the day, especially when I took our son to his soccer practice on weekends. She'd claim she was running errands or meeting friends, but when I'd casually ask about her day later, her stories would be vague, sometimes contradictory. "How was lunch with Sarah?" I'd ask. "Oh, fine. We went to that new place downtown." But when I'd mention it to Sarah at the next school event, she'd look confused. "Lunch with Kate? We haven't had lunch in months. I keep asking her to meet up, but she's always busy." Her phone became an extension of her hand, and she guarded it like it contained state secrets. She'd take it to the bathroom, sleep with it under her pillow, and would literally jump if it buzzed while we were together. When I'd joke about her sudden phone addiction, she'd laugh it off. "Just coordinating with the girls," she'd say. One evening, while she was in the shower, her phone rang on the nightstand. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen. The name Will was displayed, with a heart emoji next to it. I'd never heard Kate mention anyone named Will, and something about seeing a heart emoji next to another man's name made my stomach drop. When Kate came out of the bathroom, I mentioned the call. "Oh, that's probably Will from the gym," she said without missing a beat. "He's the trainer who helps coordinate the group classes. Probably something about scheduling." It was such a smooth, immediate response that I almost believed it. Almost. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and once it was there, it started to grow. I began paying attention to things I'd previously ignored. Kate's car would smell different when she came home, not like the restaurants she claimed to visit, but like cigarettes and beer. She'd always hated cigarette smoke, but suddenly she didn't seem bothered by it clinging to her clothes and hair. Her wardrobe changed too. She started buying clothes that were more provocative isn't the right word, but definitely different from her usual style. Tighter jeans, lower-cut tops, dresses that showed more skin than she'd typically choose. When I complimented her on a new outfit, she'd say she was trying to rediscover her personal style or feel more confident in her own skin. The final straw came when I decided to check our old devices. Kate had upgraded her phone a few months earlier, and her old one was sitting in our drawer, forgotten. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that I was imagining things, but I had to know. What I found shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. Text messages, hundreds of them, photos that made me feel sick, voice messages that I could barely stand to listen to, all between Kate and someone named William, a man she'd apparently met during one of those girls' nights out at a bar downtown. The conversations weren't just romantic, they were elaborate planning sessions. Kate wasn't just cheating. She was orchestrating an entire double life. The separation she'd suggested wasn't about finding herself. It was about creating the perfect setup to continue her affair while maintaining the legal and financial benefits of being my wife. In one particularly detailed exchange, she explained her strategy to William. Henry is so trusting, he'll never suspect anything. If we're separated, I can see you whenever I want, but I'll still be technically married. Best of both worlds, freedom without consequences. Another message made my hands shake with rage. When he takes our son to practice, that's our time. He's so predictable, always gone for exactly 2 hours. We can meet at your place, and he'll never know. They had been using my dedication as a father, my routine of taking our son to soccer practice, as their window for betrayal. Every Saturday morning when I'd kiss Kate goodbye and tell her I'd see her in a couple of hours, I was actually giving her permission to destroy our marriage. But the worst part wasn't just the affair, it was reading how they talked about me, like I was some naive fool, some obstacle to work around rather than a human being whose life they were systematically dismantling. William would ask if I suspected anything, and Kate would laugh it off in her messages. Henry, he's completely clueless. I could probably bring you home for dinner and he'd just assume you were a friend. There were messages about how boring our life was, how she felt trapped in suburbia, how exciting it was to feel alive again with William. She described our intimate moments in clinical, dismissive terms, while describing her encounters with William in graphic detail that made me want to throw the phone across the room. The woman I'd loved for 13 years had turned me into a punchline in her secret relationship. I found photos of them together at restaurants I'd never heard of, bars I'd never been to, even what looked like a weekend getaway that she'd told me was a spa retreat with the girls. In the photos, Kate looked radiant, alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. She was laughing, touching him, looking at him the way she used to look at me in our early days. The betrayal wasn't just physical or emotional, it was financial too. I discovered charges on our credit card for expensive dinners, hotel rooms, gifts that I'd never seen. Kate had been funding her affair with our money, with the income I worked 60-hour weeks to generate. For 3 days after discovering the messages, I walked around in a daze. I'd look at Kate across the breakfast table, watch her kiss me goodbye, listen to her tell me about her day, and all I could think was, you're a stranger. You're a complete stranger wearing my wife's face. The hardest part was maintaining normal behavior around our son. He was 8 years old, innocent and trusting, and he had no idea that his family was imploding. He'd chatter about school, show me his drawings, ask me to help with homework, and I'd smile and respond appropriately while my entire world crumbled inside my head. Kate would ruffle his hair, help him with dinner, read him bedtime stories, and I'd watch her perform the role of loving mother while knowing what she was really planning. The cognitive dissonance was almost unbearable, but I didn't confront her immediately. Something deeper than anger was building inside me, a cold, calculating need to understand the full scope of what she'd done to our life. If Kate could plan and execute such an elaborate deception, then I needed to be equally strategic in my response. I began documenting everything, screenshots of every message, every photo, every damning piece of evidence from that old phone. I saved the voice messages where she told William she loved him, where she laughed about my pathetic attempts to be romantic, where she planned their next encounter in explicit detail. I created backup files, stored them in multiple locations, and began consulting with a divorce attorney without Kate's knowledge. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Rebecca Chen, listened to my story with professional sympathy and strategic thinking. You have enough evidence here to protect your assets and secure primary custody, she told me. But I need you to be smart about how you proceed. Don't confront her until we have all our ducks in a row. Don't let her know that you know anything. Meanwhile, I maintained the perfect facade. I smiled when she suggested separation. I agreed that maybe some time apart would be good for both of us. I even helped her pack when she decided to move in with her sister temporarily. The performance required every ounce of self-control I possessed. When Kate would hug me goodbye, I'd smell William's cologne on her clothes and want to vomit. When she'd text me sweet messages about missing me and thinking about our future, I'd know she was probably lying next to him. When she'd call to check on our son, I'd hear the sounds of a bar or restaurant in the background and know she was living it up while I dealt with bedtime routines and homework help alone. This isn't goodbye, she told me as she loaded her suitcase into her car. It's just a pause to figure things out. I hugged her, kissed her forehead, and told her I understood. What I didn't tell her was that I'd already figured everything out, and the pause she was asking for was about to become permanent in ways she couldn't imagine. Kate moved in with her sister and immediately began what she called her new life. Based on her social media posts, which I monitored carefully, she was out almost every night, posting pictures from bars and restaurants, always looking radiant and free. She'd text me occasionally, always maintaining the pretense that this separation was about personal growth and that she missed our family. "How's your space helping you grow?" I'd ask in our phone conversations, and she'd give me these carefully crafted responses about learning to be independent and reconnecting with parts of herself she'd lost. All lies, of course. Through my continued investigation, I discovered that William was married too, living his own double life. Kate had traded our 13-year relationship for stolen moments with another cheating spouse. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't destroying my son's family. For 2 months, I played the role of the confused, heartbroken husband who just wanted his wife back. I'd call Kate occasionally, always sounding hopeful about reconciliation. I'd ask her how she was doing, if she was happy, if she missed home. She'd give me these carefully crafted responses about needing more time, about working through her feelings, about how much she appreciated my patience. "You're being so understanding about this," she'd say. "It means everything to me that you're giving me the space I need." All the while, I was building an airtight case with my attorney. We gathered financial records, documented the timeline of her affair, and prepared for a divorce that would protect both my assets and my custody rights to our son. The waiting was excruciating, but Rebecca assured me it was necessary. "We want to catch her completely off guard," she explained. "If she thinks you're still hoping for reconciliation, she won't take any steps to protect herself financially or legally." During this time, I also had to deal with the well-meaning friends and family members who kept asking how Kate was doing when she was coming home, whether we'd considered couples therapy. I had to smile and say we were working through some things, while inside I was screaming that my wife was a lying, cheating manipulator who'd been playing me for a fool. Our son asked about his mother constantly. "When is mommy coming home? Why does she have to stay at Aunt Lisa's house? Did I do something wrong?" Those questions nearly broke me. I'd hold him and assure him that none of this was his fault, that sometimes adults need time to work through complicated feelings, that his mother loved him very much. All true statements technically, but they felt like ash in my mouth. Then Kate's new life began to unravel in spectacular fashion. It started when William's wife discovered their affair. Apparently, Kate wasn't as careful with her evidence as she thought. William's wife found text messages on his phone and confronted him with the same kind of evidence I'd discovered. But unlike me, she confronted him immediately. William panicked. Rather than fight for Kate or leave his family, he immediately chose self-preservation. He blocked Kate's number, told his wife it was just a temporary lapse in judgment, and promised to cut all contact with Kate forever. Just like that, Kate's great love affair evaporated. I learned about this development through our mutual friends, who mentioned that Kate seemed down lately and wasn't going out as much. When I talked to her on the phone, she sounded different, deflated, uncertain. But she maintained the pretense that her separation was still about personal growth. Without William, Kate's party lifestyle became more desperate than liberating. Her sister, who had initially been supportive of Kate's need for space, grew tired of supporting Kate's extended adolescence. The woman who had once managed our household with perfect efficiency couldn't seem to manage even the basic responsibilities of her own life. She started drinking more. I could hear it in her voice during our phone calls, the slight slur that she probably thought I wouldn't notice. Her social media posts became more frequent but less coherent, often posted at odd hours with captions that didn't quite make sense. Her finances became a problem too. Without William paying for her nights out, and without access to our joint accounts, Kate was burning through the small amount of savings she'd accumulated. Her sister was getting tired of subsidizing her lifestyle, and Kate was too proud to ask me for money while maintaining the fiction that this separation was her choice. The final blow came on a Tuesday night when I received a call from the county jail. Kate had been arrested for DUI, her second offense. She was crying, barely coherent, begging me to come bail her out. "Henry, please, I need help. I made a mistake. I made so many mistakes." I listened to her sob over the phone. This woman who had systematically betrayed everything we'd built together, and I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no pity, just a cold recognition of consequences finally catching up with choices. "I'm sorry, Kate," I said quietly, "but that's not my responsibility anymore." "What do you mean? You're my husband. You're supposed to help me when I'm in trouble." "Am I because for the last few months you've been telling me that you need space, that you need to figure out who you are without me? Well, this is who you are without me. Someone who drinks and drives and ends up in jail." She was quiet for a long moment. "And are you saying you won't bail me out?" "I'm saying that the person who needs to bail you out is the person you've been spending your time with instead of your family." "Oh wait, he's not available anymore, is he?" I could hear her sharp intake of breath. She was realizing maybe for the first time that I knew more than I'd been letting on. "Henry, good luck, Kate. I hope you figure yourself out." I hung up. The next morning she called me again, this time from her sister's house. Her sister had bailed her out but made it clear that Kate needed to find somewhere else to live. Kate was broke, unemployed, facing legal consequences, and suddenly very interested in reconciliation. "Henry, I want to come home." I realize now that I made the biggest mistake of my life. You and our son, you're my family. Everything else was just confusion. Please, can we try again? For 13 years, those words would have meant everything to me. They would have been the answer to my prayers, the solution to my heartbreak. But sitting in my office, looking at the divorce papers my attorney had prepared, I felt only clarity. "Kate, do you remember when you told me that separation would help you figure out who you are outside of our relationship?" "Yes, but I was wrong. I know who I am now. I'm your wife, and I want to be your wife." "Well, you did figure out who you are. You're someone who can look the person who loves them most in the eye and lie every single day for months. You're someone who can turn their child's family routine into an opportunity for betrayal. You're someone who plans their deception like a military operation and then laughs about how naive their victim is." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Henry, those messages. You saw the messages." "I saw everything, Kate. Every text, every photo, every plan you made with William about how to use me while you lived your double life. I saw how you talked about me, how you both laughed about how trusting and predictable I was." "I can explain." "No, you can't. Because there is no explanation that changes what you did. There's no excuse that makes it acceptable. And there's no apology that can undo the fact that for months, you woke up every morning and chose to betray me." I could hear her crying, but the sound didn't move me the way it once would have. "The divorce papers will be served to you tomorrow," I continued. "My attorney has copies of all the evidence. You'll be hearing from the court about custody arrangements. Our son will live with me primarily, and you'll have supervised visitation until you can prove you're stable. Henry, please don't do this. I love you. I've always loved you." "No, Kate. You loved the security I provided. You loved having a home and a family to fall back on while you played house with someone else, but you never loved me because you can't do what you did to someone you actually love. But we can work through this. People overcome infidelity all the time. We can go to counseling. We can rebuild trust." "Trust?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Kate, you didn't just cheat on me. You systematically planned to destroy our marriage while making me complicit in my own betrayal. You used our son's activities as cover for your affairs. You spent our money on another man. You planned to manipulate the legal system to have your cake and eat it too. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake. This was a calculated campaign of deception. I know I messed up, but you didn't mess up. You made a series of deliberate choices over months to prioritize your own selfish desires over your family's well-being. And when your affair partner abandoned you the moment it became inconvenient, you came crawling back to your safety net. That's not love, Kate. That's convenience." After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, looking out the window at the life I was about to rebuild. Our son was at school, unaware that his world was about to change permanently. But I knew I could give him something his mother never could: honesty, consistency, and the security of knowing that the people who love him won't use that love as a weapon. The divorce proceedings moved quickly once they began. Kate hired an attorney, but with the evidence I'd gathered, her position was weak. She tried to argue for alimony, for joint custody, for a share of the business I'd built. But the documentation of her affair and her planned deception undermined every claim she made. Her attorney tried to paint me as vindictive, but Rebecca Chen was masterful in her presentation of the facts. "My client is not seeking revenge," she told the judge. "He's seeking protection for himself and his minor child from someone who has demonstrated a pattern of systematic deception and financial manipulation." Kate's drinking problem, documented by her DUI arrest, worked against her in the custody hearing. Her unemployment and financial instability further weakened her position. The judge awarded me primary custody, with Kate receiving supervised visitation every other weekend. 6 months later, the divorce was final. Kate lost everything she'd taken for granted: the house, the financial security, the respect of our mutual friends who learned the truth, and most importantly, the family she'd traded for stolen moments with a man who disappeared the moment their affair became inconvenient. She moved to another state, supposedly to start over, but I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was struggling. No job, no stable relationship, no clear direction. The woman who had once seemed to have everything figured out was now learning what it meant to face consequences without a safety net. I kept one photo of Kate on my desk, not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder. In the picture, she's smiling at our son's birthday party, looking every inch the devoted mother and wife. But now I know what I couldn't see then. That smile was a performance, and I was the audience she was fooling most of all. Our son adjusted better than I expected. Children are resilient, and I made sure to never speak poorly of his mother in front of him. But kids are also perceptive, and he seemed to understand on some level that our new life was more honest, more stable than what we'd had before. "Dad, are you happier now?" he asked me one evening as I was tucking him into bed. The question caught me off guard. "What makes you ask that? You seem, I don't know, less worried. Like you're not thinking about something sad all the time." Out of the mouths of babes. "Yeah, buddy. I am happier. Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard decisions to protect the people they love most. Like me, especially like you. I rebuilt my business, strengthened my relationships with friends and family, and slowly began to trust my own judgment again. The hardest part wasn't getting over Kate, it was getting over the version of myself that had been so willfully blind to what was happening in my own home. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I started dating again. It was terrifying at first, learning to trust someone new, learning to read signs I'd missed before. But I was older now, wiser, more attuned to the difference between genuine affection and performance. I met Sarah at our son's school. She was a teacher, divorced herself, with a daughter the same age as my boy. We started as friends, bonding over the challenges of single parenthood and the complications of co-parenting with difficult exes. The relationship developed slowly, built on honesty and mutual respect rather than passion and infatuation. "How do you know when someone is telling you the truth?" I asked her one evening as we watched our kids play in the backyard. "You don't always," she said. "But you pay attention to consistency. You watch how they treat other people when they think no one is looking. You notice whether their actions match their words over time." It was good advice. Kate had been inconsistent in ways I'd chosen to ignore. She'd been cruel to service workers when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Her actions had never matched her words, but I'd been so infatuated with the image of our perfect life that I'd made excuses for every red flag. People sometimes ask me if I ever think about giving Kate another chance, especially now that she's clearly learned her lesson about the consequences of infidelity. The answer is simple: some lessons come too late, and some trust, once broken, can never be repaired. I don't lose sleep anymore wondering when her betrayal started, because I've finally accepted that it doesn't matter. What matters is that it ended, and I was strong enough to end it on my terms rather than continuing to be a victim of her choices. Kate taught me something valuable, though she never intended to, that sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are when they think you're not looking. She showed me that beneath her perfect exterior was someone capable of breathtaking selfishness and calculated deception. But she also showed me something about myself, that I was stronger, smarter, and more capable of protecting what mattered than I'd ever realized. The man who trusted blindly for 13 years learned to trust wisely. The husband who would have forgiven anything learned that some things shouldn't be forgiven. Today, when I look at my son, I see a future built on honesty rather than illusion. When I look at my business, I see success earned through integrity rather than maintained through deception. And when I look in the mirror, I see a man who survived being systematically betrayed by the person he trusted most and came out stronger. Kate wanted a separation to figure out who she was outside our relationship. In the end, she figured it out perfectly. She was someone who would sacrifice everything real for something temporary. Someone who would hurt the people who loved her most for the excitement of something forbidden. And I figured out who I was too. Someone who deserved better. Someone strong enough to demand better, and someone wise enough to recognize the difference between love and manipulation. The greatest revenge wasn't anything I did to Kate. It was simply refusing to let her destroy more of my life than she already had. She wanted to keep one foot in our marriage while living a lie. Instead, she lost everything, and learned that actions have consequences, even for people who think they're smart enough to avoid them. Some stories end with forgiveness and second chances. This one ends with self-respect, and the understanding that loving someone doesn't mean accepting their betrayal. Kate made her choices, and I made mine. The difference is, I can live with mine. I used to think I knew everything about love, marriage, and trust. I was wrong about all of it. But now I know something more valuable, that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from someone who has proven they don't deserve your love, no matter how much they claim to want it back. 2 years have passed since the divorce was finalized. Kate has tried to contact me several times, usually during holidays or our son's birthday, always with some variation of the same message. She's changed, she's learned from her mistakes, she wants to try again. I read these messages with the same detached interest I'd give to spam email, then delete them without responding. My life now is built on a foundation of truth rather than performance. When Sarah tells me she loves me, I believe her because her actions consistently support her words. When my son asks me a difficult question, I give him an honest answer appropriate for his age rather than a convenient fiction. When I make business decisions, I consider the long-term consequences, rather than just what feels good in the moment. I sleep well at night now, not because my life is perfect, no one's life is perfect, but because it's real. Every relationship I have is based on honesty and mutual respect. Every success I achieve is earned rather than manipulated. Every choice I make is one I can live with because I'm not hiding from the consequences anymore. Kate taught me that perfection is often just an elaborate lie, but she also taught me that truth, however imperfect, is always worth more than the most beautiful deception. For that lesson, as painful as it was to learn, I suppose I should be grateful. The woman who tried to destroy my life ended up giving me something much more valuable: the knowledge of my own strength, the wisdom to recognize authentic love, and the courage to demand nothing less than I deserve. Last month I heard through a mutual friend that Kate had been in another car accident. This time, thankfully, no one was hurt, but it was another DUI. She's apparently living in a studio apartment 3 states away, working part-time at a retail job, still struggling with the consequences of choices she made years ago. Part of me feels sorry for her, but a larger part of me recognizes that she's exactly where her actions led her. Our son is thriving. He's 11 now, confident and happy, with friends and interests and a future that stretches bright before him. He sees his mother every other weekend when she can afford to visit, and I've never tried to poison his relationship with her. But he's also old enough now to see the difference between the stability of our home and the chaos that seems to follow Kate wherever she goes. "Dad," he said to me recently, "I'm glad you didn't let Mom come back." The statement caught me off guard. "Why's that, buddy?" "Because I think if she had come back, she would have just done it again, and you would have been sad all the time, like you were before. Kids see more than we think they do." Even at 8 years old, he'd sensed the tension in our house, the forced smiles, the underlying current of something being wrong even when everything looked perfect on the surface. Sarah and I got married last year in a small ceremony with just our families and closest friends. Our son walked me down the aisle, proud to be part of creating something new and honest. Sarah's daughter officially became my stepdaughter, and my son gained the sister he'd always wanted. We're building something together based on mutual respect, shared values, and most importantly, complete honesty about our pasts and our hopes for the future. When people ask me about forgiveness, about whether I've let go of my anger toward Kate, I tell them the truth. I forgave her not for her sake, but for mine. Carrying that anger was like carrying poison, and I had better things to do with my life than remain tethered to someone who had proven she didn't deserve my emotional energy. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. Understanding doesn't mean acceptance. And moving on doesn't mean forgetting the lessons learned from someone else's betrayal. I run my business differently now, too. I pay more attention to the character of the people I work with, not just their qualifications. I watch for consistency between words and actions. I trust, but I verify. The naive man who believed that everyone was as honest as he tried to be has been replaced by someone wiser, more careful, but not cynical. The greatest victory isn't that Kate suffered consequences for her actions, though she did. The greatest victory is that I refused to let her betrayal turn me into someone I couldn't respect. I could have become bitter, could have used her infidelity as an excuse to treat other people poorly, could have let her deception poison every future relationship. Instead, I chose to become someone worthy of genuine love, someone who could recognize it when it appeared, and someone strong enough to protect it once I found it. 3 years ago, I was a man living in an illusion, trusting someone who was systematically destroying everything I thought we'd built together. Today, I'm a man living in reality, messy sometimes, imperfect always, but honest and real in mine. Kate wanted to discover who she was outside our relationship. Mission accomplished. She discovered she was someone willing to sacrifice everything meaningful for temporary excitement, someone who could look their child in the eye while planning to destroy his family, someone who could smile and lie and manipulate without apparent conscience. I discovered something too, that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, that I deserved better than I'd been accepting, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's worst impulses by accepting their betrayal. I don't lose sleep over what happened anymore. I sleep peacefully, knowing that I chose truth over comfort, self-respect over convenience, and my son's future over my own past pain. Kate may have broken my trust, but she couldn't break my spirit, and in the end, that made all the difference. The man I am today, father, husband, business owner, friend, is someone I can respect. He's someone who learned that love without respect is just dependency, that trust without verification is just naivety, and that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is walk away from someone who has proven they don't deserve you. I was once a victim of someone else's selfishness and deception. Today, I'm a survivor who chose to build something better from the ruins of what was never as real as I thought it was. That's not a tragedy, that's a victory, and it's a victory that no one can ever take away from me.